Hi, you're listening to the Restaurant Marketer and Innovator podcast. We're here on Judging Day and we are talking to some of our judges and really trying to understand what makes a great winning campaign, talking a little bit about the winners from this year's RMI Awards. And we're here at BrewDog at Waterloo. And it is an incredible venue. If you've not been, definitely come down. And they have a podcast studio. So that's why we're here doing this, because the amount of people we get asking us why someone wins and what makes for a great win really made us think that this is such a good thing to do this year. So I've got two guests in the studio here with me this time, and they are Katy from CAM and Olivia from Zonal. So hello to you both.
Hello, James.
Hi, James.
Let's start off just introducing yourselves very quickly. We'll maybe start with you, Olivia.
So I'm Olivia Fitzgerald. I'm the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer from Zonal. So selling technology into hospitality brands.
Great, and you're one of our long-term sponsors, so thank you so much for being such a great partner for such a long time. It's
Pleasure.
From the very beginning of RMI. So, and over to you, Katy, who's one of our, again, long-term agency partners. So tell us a bit about you.
I'm Katy Moses. I'm founder and MD of CAM. We are a research and insights consultancy. We pretty much exist to make sure that everybody that works in the hospitality industry, whether it's an operator or a supplier, bases any of their strategic decisions, easy for me to say, around the customer and the consumer and the trends that are happening out there.
Right, I think that a big round of applause to both of you. Thank you for being involved. It's worth saying, and for those of you that haven't listened to any of the other podcasts, we have this awesome little button system here that I've fallen in love with. I'm just going to walk around, I think, with one of these, because it's like, this one particularly, being a relatively new dad, this is like definitely the one to go with, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about what you found interesting today and how you found the judging process. Given that I think both of you have judged for us before, actually a few times before, so you're absolutely veteran judges here at RMI. Maybe just talk a little bit about how you found it and how you find the whole process.
Really kind of quite challenging, but in a good way. I mean, some of the submissions, some of the categories, just too many brilliant submissions and really hard to choose between them. Others where there was a really clear winner and it was a bit more straightforward maybe. But I think something that stood out for me, and I'm sure this will be music to Katy's ears, is the where people sort of used data really effectively, where they had actually they could be very clear about the impact of what they'd implemented and why they, how they'd kind of done the research, decided on their plan of action and what the results had been. That was very strong in terms of an application. So it was one of the things I'd be taking away from it was to try and, I guess, make sure that applicants understand that process of just putting together a really coherent application. But some great, absolutely brilliant examples of that today.
Great. Anything to add, Katy?
Yeah, no, Olivia's absolutely right. I think that one of the things that we've seen this year, and we see it every year, but I think it's been heightened this year, is that idea of let's get some insight as to where we are, and then let's get some insight as to where we're going, and then let's get some insight as to how well that's landed. We can, in every industry, be guilty of being busy idiots, and actually, do not confuse activity with accomplishment. And the idea that we can see where we started and then where we've ended up, I think is incredibly important. The other point for me, actually, that I think I've seen evolve throughout the years of RMI, and I've been a judge, I think, pretty much since the beginning, certainly for the last 4 or 5 years, is that it's great to see when people look outside of their role and their company, and what they are submitting to us is something that is industry changing. It's not just something new specifically for them, but I'm really enjoying seeing those things come through that I think will actually shape the future of the hospitality industry.
It's really interesting because when we came about coming up with this idea to begin with, that was like one of our core objectives was about defining the future of the sector. And I think that what we always thought was that we were quite an operations-focused sector before. It was very much focused and driven on kind of making operations better, and therefore it was almost kind of a natural evolution rather than a lot of thoughtful, strategic revolution, maybe. And hopefully that what we're seeing coming through is also a change in the sector.
Totally. And just from my point of view, having worked in the sector now and in insights and research for the last 15 years, what I'm seeing now is people putting marketing at the forefront. And actually, the old adage of, I haven't got any cash, so I'm going to cut my marketing budget, or I'm going to cut my comms or my PR budget. I think people are now realising that's not where the cuts need to be made. I think there's a great Richard Branson quote that said, if I had £1 left to spend, I'd spend it on PR. And I know PR isn't marketing, but what I'm saying is that getting the word out to the consumer has become more and more and more important. And of course, a lot of the marketing that's out there is becoming a little bit wallpaper to consumers, and we get told that a lot. So you have to stand out. So in order to stand out, entering awards like this really makes you reevaluate what you've already done and whether you are hitting that objective.
I think there was some really interesting conversation going on today, just along the same lines of. And I think hearing the marketer's voice coming through much more clearly from hospitality, and not only taking those marketers taking their place on the hospitality stage, but actually the cultural stage more broadly. And I think that's what we've the conversation today has been about, not just how does this rank in the world of hospitality, but like if we look at this as a development that's gone on this year, just in general out there in culture, like how does it stack up? And in a way that's gives you such a different lens on things. And I think in the past, when we would have thought about something as being innovative in the hospitality world, perhaps it wasn't really very innovative. No. But I think things are changing in that respect. And actually, this is an industry which can innovate and can be truly quite, challenging culturally. And I think that's what we should be aiming for.
And do you think, Olivia, because in my mind, I think that the pandemic has almost given us that open door to be a bit more innovative? That's how I've seen this year's judging.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I wonder whether that sort of, because certainly, I don't know, having worked in hospitality for 30 years, I think things were always very operator-led, weren't they? But I think perhaps a lot of operators have had to, having had that step back and thinking about where do we fit into the bigger cultural picture? How do we stay relevant? All that kind of thing that isn't just going to be solved by operational efficiencies. And I think I do see, I think that 5 years into the future, I think it will only be, I imagine IT businesses like Zonal selling to marketers, not just selling to IT people, which may be historically where we've been. So I think things are changing a bit, which is really refreshing.
Absolutely. And it almost feels it's like the work we've all been doing over the past 5 or 6 years is paying off. So thank you to everyone involved. So let's jump into the winners. That's what we're here to talk about. So the first category that I think you judged was Best New or Improved Visual Identity, always very popular. Of course, I think one thing that we've never been bad at as a sector, or almost certainly for the last couple of decades, is producing beautiful venues and building great brands. And I think that it's fair to say that continues. So was there anything that particularly stood out before we go on to the winner?
It was a really strong category.
Very good. Very good submissions overall. Yeah. And a couple of which were really hard to choose between, because they were, I think, both great examples of companies approaching existing brands and asking themselves in a truly open-minded fashion, what are our assumptions about our brands actually correct? Do we really understand our customer base and why they do what they do, and how do we stay ahead? How do we stay relevant for the future, and how do we refresh where we are right now? So yeah, I think the winner particularly not only created something very, very beautiful with the work that they did, but they also reevaluated their who are their core customer, how are they going to appeal to them, how are they going to go forward into the future and still be fresh and kind of relevant in the next, for the next kind of 6 years ahead, rather than looking back to the last 6.
And on a point of the quality of submission, by the way, this was the best quality submission that we had of the categories that we judged. I think you'd agree.
Yeah.
And any advice for anybody that's entering this category in future? There is no such thing as too much detail as long as that detail is relevant. So where people get marked down is where we have questions that aren't answered within the submission. So we will read through something and go, oh yeah, so what does that look like? And then we don't have those visuals. So it's certainly in this particular category, the biggest piece of advice that I could give is give us all the detail, give us all your visuals, and make sure you tell the story with it. And the winner has done exactly that.
And I think that one of the things we've been clear on is that people can provide links to other stuff. They can, we almost encourage people to let us go find what you're looking for. But what I think is really important is that we know the brief to the judges is like, let's not go and search out this campaign online, because it's almost not fair. If you want this to be seen, then put it in front of the judges. You've got supporting material. You can provide supporting links. Like, make it easy for us, because we're sitting with 50, 60, 70 applications and trying to judge your business against many others. Like, we're not going to do the hard work for you, right?
Definitely.
Well, we did have a situation, I won't say which category it's in because we don't want to drop anyone in it, but we did have a situation where somebody literally, their submission was a couple of links. And great, we can see what you've done, but we don't know the process that you've taken to get there. We don't know what the results of that have been. And actually, to be honest, I think the word we used was lazy, wasn't it? Because if you want to win an award and you're good enough to win an award, then you are good enough and you should be spending the time to put together that submission.
Pretty pictures don't win awards on that.
Pretty pictures do not win awards, especially not with this judging group, because this judging group were harsh this year.
And I think when I think back to our advisory boards at the very beginning of RMI, like, it was all about not being the colouring in departments.
Exactly.
Yeah. And actually just, I think making that link, and I think you were referring to it as telling the story, Katy. I think that's exactly what really helps, is that the link between the research that was done and the conclusions that you came to, and then the actions that you decided on as a result, and then the results that you saw. And actually the really standout submissions did that, but some didn't at all. Which is, it sounds like a really basic point, but it is actually literally that sequence of events that's like, how did we switch our brains on and look at our brand in a different way?
Well, exactly. And it's like any good story. It needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if your submission doesn't have that, then we don't know where to start as judges, because we are thrown in the deep end before we've understood what you're trying to achieve. If you don't have that middle bit, we're just going straight to the results. Well, results are no good unless we know how you've got there. Yeah. So, yeah, that story of a beginning, a middle, and an end is absolutely crucial.
There's also, dare I say it, very, very clear expectations online of what your category requires of you. And I think that, for those people that aren't just simply following what's been asked as criteria, I think that's what I always say when people, and we get all these phone calls here, how do I win? Well, you win by, first of all, doing something great. Well, hopefully not just
and then
good.
reading the instructions.
But then actually doing what you've been asked. And people are like, how do I set it out? I'm like, well, a good starting point is just the headings that we've given you. Yeah. Just answering those.
And do you know what? We have had, and over the years, we've had submissions where people have the submission has been an A4 piece of paper with those headings. We don't mind that. That's good. We do not object to that at all.
Ideally designed, though, right? When something's designed, it definitely makes you think,
of course, but,
I get this.
Yeah, but using that as a guide is not something the judges worry about, because actually it does show that you've read your paper before you've tried to fill it in, so to speak.
It's like, think of it like an exam, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so who was the winner?
No, we can't tell you that.
Oh, no, it's okay. We're going after the...
This is of our first one.
Of the first one. Yeah. So the winner was Brewhouse and Kitchen.
Great business, great brand. And
beautiful work. And all the applications that they... seeing all the places that it comes to life in the business. I thought that was really strong.
The visual identity that they have settled on is fantastic, don't get me wrong. But the submission of how they got there was not just good to see, it was interesting to read.
Yeah.
It was a great story.
It's also interesting because obviously we get to see them as they're coming in, and it was one of the ones that came in quite early. Like most people submit like within 2 hours of the deadline of entry, and it always does make you think that if one's coming early, you almost think that someone's really spent time working like effectively and planned it too.
So professional.
That obviously has anything to do with the judging, but it's just an interesting point.
Very succinct. Very nice application.
Yeah. So the second category you guys judge was best communication, right? So best communication. So have we got a winner there, reminding that you're allowed to say who the winner is, because this has been released after the course.
But we don't know what the actual title of the winner was.
Hang on a sec.
Yeah, you might have to do a little bit of cutting here, I'm afraid.
It was
because it was the Fleet Street
Saving
Saving
hospitality.
hospitality.
Yeah, saving hospitality.
Okay.
with
So
UK
big. It's so big
hospitality.
we can't even read. It's like it's that thing.
It's the behemoth that we can't even deal
that
with.
thing that happened to within hospitality
I mean,
where
this was great, right?
superheroes came into action.
two-year campaign, really. I mean, and let's face it, it's probably still ongoing. So I think that, and it's a massive. It'd be
Yeah.
clear and quite real to say that number of businesses that entered these awards probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for.
Oh my God,
the work of-
100%.
It was quite hard looking at that one and then anything else that might have entered that category. It was kind of like, okay, so these guys actually say it kind of saved hospitality.
I genuinely didn't know when we were judging it. I started to get a little bit emotional. I was like the hairs were standing up on my arms, and I was like, I'm even doing it now. I can feel it because you know, all of us in this room were so close to that catastrophe from when it started back in the March right up to present date. And actually, as I started to read everything they'd done, I was like, shit, how did they even have the time to sleep? Like it was such a massive initiative that was started off. I do think it saved a lot of hospitality businesses. But I also think that we all owe that particular communications initiative a personal debt of gratitude as well, because they looked after us personally. We got phone calls from those people. We got updates from those people. And I think that without those people joining together and doing that, I don't think we'd all be sat here now.
And I think it's also fantastic from our perspective that there's going to be a silver R alongside all of Kate and UK Hospitality's very large shelf of awards, which are hugely deserved. So that's
Absolutely.
great.
Maybe it'll be worth more than the OBE to her, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I think so. When we're looking at the list of achievements, and the one at the top was like more than 30 meetings at Downing Street.
Yeah.
Right, can't really argue with that, can you?
No, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Most at about 5 a.m. from the conversations I had with Kate.
Contextually, it's also worth reminding people that we're sitting in November in judging, so we've just been through that process of however many prime ministers in however many weeks.
17 of each.
So I'm pretty sure
Too
that
many.
Kate's equally as busy right now, to be fair. So the third final one that you guys judged was best digital engagement, I understand, and we're working through the notes here. So who is our winner for this one?
We actually put Box Park and Women Who Play as our winner for that. And they actually were brought in from another category because we felt that where they sat and what they had achieved actually deserved to be recognised in this particular category.
And it's something that we really encourage people to do, is if you've got something that sits across multiple categories, it's okay to enter multiple categories. And if we feel like there's a better place it's suited like this, that's exactly what we do. Because ultimately, whilst we're sitting and judging within categories, we also sit with all of them. And we believe our job as judges is to really judge the best that's available. And I think that, as you say, this was an incredible piece. And I think that it's interesting actually that Box Park has really, they were our big winner last year with multiple awards. They consistently deliver. I think they're a real innovative player in our sector, and I think that they absolutely deserve these awards. So why did we pick this winner?
Sorry, no, I was just going to start up by saying that both Olivia and I are big fans of women's sport. And one of the, you just used the word yourself, innovative. One of the things that we read in the submission was the idea that this came about way before the Lionesses were having the success. This was before we knew whether we would do any good, whether we knew consumers were going to be buying into it. So for me, the starting point was their starting point, the fact that they weren't hanging on anyone's coattails. They came up with this idea and they decided to take a punt on it. And I don't think we do that often enough, especially with things like women's sport.
No, definitely, and they got behind. They sort of got involved right at the very beginning, before anyone else caught onto it, and made a big commitment. They also, I think, it was a great example of a real digital first campaign that achieved incredible results, sort of 7 million impressions across social media, which I think is just incredible. 250,000 engagements along the way, but that also paid off in a big way in the venue. So it kind of doubled the footfall on the match days and that kind of stuff. So I think it was sort of something that had both a real broader kind of societal impact as well as an impact on that hospitality business. So it was great business and just great, great cultural input as well, which I think it ticked a lot of boxes and just in terms of the results that they got, they kind of dwarfed some of the other campaigns that we looked at. It was just so impressive.
Yeah, and as Olivia says, as judges, we aren't just looking for what's been great for your business. We are looking for how have you externally affected things, whether it's things in the hospitality industry or whether it is cultural changes that we are trying to bring about. The hospitality industry should be at the forefront of those. We have the ability to be at the forefront of those, and Box Park for us did that with women's sport in this particular campaign.
I think it's an incredible example, and it's a great one to end our 3 podcasts on. So thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time to be here and lending your incredible experience. It's been a fantastic day. Can't wait for January, which is oddly behind us for those people listening now. So,
I'm in a time warp.
That weird.
Well,
weird thing.
what you should be saying now is who's got the R.
Yes, in fact, for those people that don't know, we've had the big R, the big red foam R, stolen every year. So it probably is out there somewhere. If you've got it, bring it back.
The morning after every single RMI event, I get a text from James Hacon saying,
It's you,
have you got the R?
And to be fair, you've never had the R.
So far, it has never been me.
Moses, bring back the R.
Innocent.
Last year, someone actually pre-rented a van, steal the R. Like, this is actually a thing.
Was it Katy? It was Katy.
It was not me. You just open up my front door and a load of big foam R's fall out.
My feedback to people is, if you want a big R, the silver ones that you put on your side by entering the awards are much better than the big red foam ones. So
yeah, I know who took the last one, and I don't think that's the case for them.
I think there's 2 agencies, at least in London, who now have these in their room. I've been happy to, because of course it's all great marketing.
And Fleet Street are now called Leech Street if you go into their lobby.
Well, thanks to you both. Thanks to everyone for listening to these, and make sure to enter next year. I think that deserves a massive round of applause.
Yay! Thank you very much.